I eat healthy, exercise regularly, take my meds on time. So why does my blood pressure keep going up and down? That was the question Mr. Henry, age 72, carried with him as he walked into my clinic one early April morning. A tall, lean man with deep lines on his forehead, but bright, determined eyes. To most people, Mr. Henry looked like the picture of healthy aging, daily morning walks, lots of greens, no smoking, no alcohol. He prepared every meal with care, low sodium, fiber-rich, and light on oils. After lunch, he'd sip herbal tea and finish with a small handful of mixed nuts, because he'd read somewhere that nuts are good for the heart. And yet, his blood pressure kept fluctuating. Some days it spiked as high as 160, even when he hadn't eaten anything salty, hadn't been stressed, hadn't lost sleep. He started to worry. Maybe I'm just getting old and my body's no longer listening to me. I asked more about his meals. Everything sounded reasonable, until he pulled a small packet from his shirt pocket. Roasted mixed nuts, salted cashews, macadamias, and a few chocolate-covered almonds. I eat this every day, he smiled, instead of sweets. That's when I gently said, Mr. Henry, not all nuts are heart-friendly, and not all bodies, especially after 60, process them the same way. Many people believe that eating healthy is always safe, but after age 60, the body changes. The cardiovascular system becomes more sensitive. Small things, like the kind of nuts we snack on, can quietly push our blood pressure higher each day. The problem isn't one big mistake. It's the small habits, repeated daily, that we barely notice. You don't need to cut out nuts entirely, but you do need to know which ones truly support heart health and which ones to limit, especially after 60. In the next section, I'll walk you through 5 common, healthy nuts that might not be as heart-friendly as they seem, and how to enjoy them safely without silently raising your blood pressure or increasing stroke risk. Let's explore each common mistake and the simple adjustments that can make a world of difference. Mrs. Linda, age 69, is a cheerful woman who loves to cook and always keeps a positive spirit. Since retiring, she's taken better care of her health, cutting back on sweets, avoiding red meat, eating more greens, and choosing heart-friendly foods. One habit she was especially proud of. Every afternoon, she'd enjoy a handful of salted cashews. They're way healthier than cookies or salty chips, she'd say, and still fun to snack on. For the first few weeks, things were fine. But then she started noticing strange symptoms, feeling jittery, a slight pressure in her head, trouble sleeping, and occasional lightheadedness when standing up. When she checked her blood pressure, it had risen from a steady 128/78 to nearly 104/690. Concerned, she cut back on salt during meals, avoided fish sauce and soy sauce. But the numbers stayed high, and the fatigue didn't go away. During a nutrition review, we walked through her entire diet. Everything looked great until she mentioned her daily salted cashews. We checked the nutrition label. Just one small serving, about 30 grams, contained over 180 milligrams of sodium. For someone over 60, the daily recommended sodium intake shouldn't exceed 100 milligrams. And Mrs. Linda wasn't stopping at just one serving. On some days, she ate 2 full handfuls, close to 400 milligrams of sodium, from just a snack. It's not as much as a bowl of instant noodles. But that's exactly the danger. It comes from something that feels healthy, eaten quietly, every day, without raising red flags. This is what we call hidden salt, and it's one of the top reasons why blood pressure rises without any obvious cause. Mrs. Linda eventually switched to unsalted or lightly steamed cashews. They tasted bland at first, but she got used to them by mixing them with unsweetened raisins or roasted pumpkin seeds for a naturally sweet nutty balance. Most importantly, we set a clear limit, 20-30 grams a day, about 15-18 cashews used as a snack, not a meal replacement. After a few weeks, her blood pressure began to stabilize. But more than that, she realized something powerful. Just because something is labeled healthy doesn't mean it's harmless, especially as we age, when our bodies become more sensitive to everything we eat. Sometimes it's not the big, scary foods that hurt our health. It's the small daily habits we repeat without thinking, the ones we assume are safe. Mr. George, 65, is a man who takes his meals seriously. After his annual health screening last year, his doctor advised him to cut back on red meat and increase healthy fats. So he made some smart changes: oatmeal for breakfast, salmon for lunch, and his favorite new ritual, a few macadamia nuts after dinner, for heart health. At first it was just 3 or 4 nuts, but gradually it became his go-to dessert. Some evenings he'd eat nearly half a cup, snacking while watching TV, not realizing how much was adding up. Within just a month, he'd gained almost 5 pounds, and his blood pressure started creeping up from a steady 125/80 to 140/88. He felt more sluggish, especially after dinner, and sometimes his heart would race, even without caffeine or salty foods. When we reviewed his diet together, everything seemed in order. Except for one detail: the macadamia nuts. The one thing he thought was helping was actually tipping the balance. Macadamias are an excellent source of monounsaturated fats, great for the heart. But they're also one of the most calorie-dense nuts. Just 10 to 12 small nuts can pack over 200 calories, about the same as a full bowl of rice. And as we age, our ability to process fats slows down. So even good fats, when overconsumed, can lead to weight gain, disturb blood lipid levels, and raise blood pressure quietly over time. Once he understood this, Mr. George adjusted his habits. Instead of eating them every night, he now limits himself to 4 and 6 macadamia nuts, once or twice a week, and enjoys them as a mid-afternoon snack, not right after dinner, to avoid that heavy, bloated feeling at bedtime. He also started drinking warm water afterward to support digestion. Just 3 weeks later, his blood pressure settled back into the healthy range. That uncomfortable heaviness after meals, gone, and he shared a new insight with me, one I'll never forget. Just because something is good for you doesn't mean more is better. Sometimes the finest things require the greatest restraint. Mr. Larry, 78, lives alone, but stays surprisingly active. He enjoys reading, catching the evening news, and has one nightly ritual he never skips: sinking into his armchair with a jar of BBQ-flavored pistachios. Crispy, a little salty, and so easy to eat, he'd say. A few handfuls, and I don't even feel full. But the truth, it wasn't just a few handfuls. When I asked about his daily portion during a consultation, he estimated eating about 1 cup every night, nearly 100 grams. And not just plain pistachios. These were heavily seasoned, coated in BBQ flavoring, smoky salt, and additives that make them highly palatable, and dangerously easy to overeat. For the past month, Mr. Larry had noticed troubling changes: trouble sleeping, rapid heartbeat at night, and occasional lightheadedness when standing. A blood pressure check confirmed it, 150/92, significantly higher than his previous healthy baseline. The culprit? That nightly snack jar. Flavored pistachios often contain 2 to 3 times more sodium than plain ones, usually in the form of refined salt, which is particularly harmful to older adults. Even worse, these flavored varieties come with additives, hidden sugars, and preservatives, all of which can negatively impact cardiovascular health over time. Once he understood the issue, Mr. Larry made a change. He switched to unsalted, unflavored pistachios. At first, they tasted bland, but with a little creativity, pairing them with a few slices of fresh apples or pear, he found a combination that was both enjoyable and heart-friendly. Most importantly, he began limiting his intake to 30 dri per day, about 40 pistachios, and avoided eating them every single night. Just 2 weeks later, his sleep improved. His blood pressure started to drop and stabilize. He laughed and told me, "I still enjoy my nuts, but now I snack to stay well, not to raise my risk." And he's absolutely right. Not all nuts are created equal, especially once they've been dusted with flavorings, sweeteners, or extra salt. What seems like a harmless treat can quietly send your blood pressure climbing. Mrs. Susan, 66, is a woman of subtle tastes. She loves the scent of morning coffee, the soft notes of classical music, and her daily indulgence, a few chocolate-covered almonds after breakfast. To her, it was a tiny luxury, a touch of sweetness, a sense of elegance, a gentle way to start the day. She believed it was a smart choice. Almonds are heart-healthy, and dark chocolate is often praised for its vascular benefits. Each morning, she'd enjoy about 10 pieces. It didn't seem like much, but after a month, she started feeling unusually sluggish, especially in the mornings. She woke up heavy, tired, and most notably, her morning blood pressure readings began creeping up. One morning, it reached 154/95. Concerned, she came in for a visit. We reviewed her routine, diet, sleep, activity. And there it was. That glimmering little habit was hiding the real issue. Yes, almonds are nutrient-rich, but once coated in chocolate, especially commercially produced chocolate, those benefits can quickly be masked. The kind she was eating was made with milk chocolate or sweetened dark chocolate, high in saturated fats and refined sugar. Just 10 small pieces could deliver over 250 calories and 15 to 20 grams of sugar. For someone over 60, that's more than enough to spike blood sugar, elevate heart rate, and cause blood pressure to rise, especially when consumed first thing in the morning, before the body has fully warmed up. Once she understood the source of the problem, Mrs. Susan made some gentle changes. She switched to raw almonds, soaking them overnight to reduce phytic acid, making them easier to digest. On days she craved a bit of sweetness, she allowed herself a square of 85% dark chocolate, no more than 10 grams, and only after lunch when her body was more metabolically stable. The results came gradually, just like her approach. Her morning blood pressure stopped spiking. She felt less sluggish and more refreshed. She smiled and told me, "I still enjoy a little sweetness, but now I choose the kind that doesn't make my heart work harder." Sometimes the trap isn't in ignorance, it's in the belief that we're doing the right thing. And often, the sweetest habits we hold dear are the quiet culprits behind our body's silent alarms. Mr. Paul, 70, used to be a long-haul truck driver. Now retired, his days are slower, but old habits die hard. Whether watching TV, driving around town, or relaxing on his porch, he always had a bag of sunflower seeds by his side. Not the plain kind, but the salted, flavored ones, with a savory kick that made them hard to stop eating. "It's just a small snack," he laughed. "Sometimes I munch on them for hours and barely notice." But after a few weeks he began to feel off. Dizziness when standing, a heavy head, occasional palpitations at night. A blood pressure reading came in at 152/96, despite no changes in diet, routine, or medication. We sat down to comb through his daily habits. Everything seemed in check until he handed me the seed bag, a pre-packaged, salted and seasoned sunflower seed mix with a generous dusting of flavoring. He was eating about half the bag per sitting, over 60 gras. The nutrition label showed 250 to 300 millinars of sodium per small serving. At the rate he was consuming, he was getting 600–700 milliliters of sodium daily, just from that snack. At 70, the kidneys and blood vessels aren't as efficient as they once were. Excess sodium isn't flushed out as easily. It lingers, building pressure within blood vessels and silently driving blood pressure up. Once he understood the impact, Mr. Paul made a shift. He swapped the salted seeds for plain, unsalted sunflower seeds, lightly toasting them at home. He also reduced the portion size, just 1 to 2 tablespoons per snack, no more than 3–4 times a week. For variety, he began mixing chia seeds into plain yogurt, a heart-friendly, low-sodium alternative. Within 2 weeks, his sleep improved, blood pressure stabilized, and the heavy head feeling disappeared. He told me, "I didn't give up snacking. I just changed how I snack, so it wouldn't quietly work against me." Sometimes the culprits aren't loud or obvious. They come in tiny, crunchy shells, sitting harmlessly in your palm, yet sneaking into your system day by day, forcing your heart to work overtime in silence. There's something I often remind my older patients. High blood pressure doesn't appear overnight. It rarely stems from one big mistake, but rather it builds up from small habits we overlook every day. A handful of salted cashews in the afternoon, a few chocolate-covered almonds to satisfy a sweet tooth, a small bowl of macadamias, thinking, healthy fats mean no limits. Individually, these choices may seem harmless, but repeated daily, especially with age, they can quietly become a burden on your heart. After 60, the body doesn't bounce back the way it used to. Each heartbeat requires more effort. And the seemingly small habits, the ones we think are safe, can nudge blood pressure upward, little by little, without warning. The good news is, you don't have to overhaul everything at once. No one's asking you to give up nuts completely. All you need is clarity, knowing which types support your heart, which to limit, and making gradual changes, one small shift at a time. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you found yourself thinking, "Am I making the same mistakes Mr. Henry, Mrs. Susan, or Grandpa Larry made?" then now might be a good time to take a closer look. Which of today's mistakes did you recognize in yourself? Drop a comment below. Your story might help someone else realize what they've overlooked too. If you found this video helpful, feel free to share it with someone you care about. They might need a gentle reminder, just like this one. And before we end, one important note. This video is for educational purposes only. If you're experiencing unusual symptoms or are currently undergoing treatment, please consult your healthcare provider or visit a medical facility near you. Health doesn't come from perfection. It comes from making the right small choices and repeating them every single day. Wishing you a strong heart and gentle habits that are kind to your body.